Have you ever felt like your own mind is the loudest place in the world? Not because of sound, but because of the endless stream of thoughts, doubts, regrets, what-ifs, should-haves, a war, silent but constant, between who you are and who you think you should be. No one else can hear it. No one else sees the invisible battlefield behind your eyes. You go to work. You smile. You function. But inside, there's a storm. A whisper that says, "You're not enough." A replay button stuck on past mistakes. An inner critic louder than any voice outside of you. And you try to silence it, don't you? You scroll. You binge. You distract. But the mind always finds a way to return to that old script. That familiar loop of self-doubt and quiet despair. It's exhausting. Because even when life is fine on the outside, on the inside, it feels like you're drowning in thoughts you never chose. Memories you didn't invite. Fears that come dressed as logic. And perhaps the most painful part? No one prepared you for this. They taught you math, grammar, facts, but never how to handle your own mind. Never how to deal with the voice that lives in your head and tells you stories that feel like truth. But here's something to consider. What if that voice isn't you? What if the chaos isn't personal, but patterned? What if the war you're fighting isn't even yours? Because here's a truth most people never realize. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer. The awareness behind them. And if that's true, then maybe the war inside your mind isn't where you have to live. Maybe it's where you begin. If the war begins in the mind, then awareness is the first ceasefire. It's the quiet realization that you don't have to believe every thought that knocks on your door. That just because a thought arrives, doesn't mean you have to invite it in. Awareness is not the end, but it is the beginning. The soil where all change is planted. Think about this. You've been living in your mind for years. But how often do you pause and watch it? Not judge, not react, just observe. Like watching clouds pass through the sky, some dark, some light, but all temporary. Awareness is that space. That gentle distance between you and what you're thinking. It's the light that enters the room when you stop trying to turn off the darkness. And instead, just open the window. This awareness doesn't come with a bang. It arrives slowly, softly, in a breath you actually feel, in a thought you finally recognize as recycled, not true, in the silence between two waves of anxiety. And in that silence, something powerful begins. Choice. The power to choose where your attention goes. The power to say, "This thought is not me." The power to plant a new seed in the soil of your consciousness. Because here's the truth. Every thought is a seed. Every moment of attention is water. What you water, grows. So ask yourself, what have you been watering? Fear? Regret? Unworthiness? Now ask again, what could you plant instead? It starts with the tiniest shift. A single breath. A moment of clarity in the noise. That's where awareness lives. Not in perfection, but in presence. And like any garden, it doesn't bloom overnight. But if you're willing to plant new thoughts with intention, and nurture them with patience and compassion, you'll begin to see. The battlefield can become a garden. But only if you stop fighting long enough to plant something new. Every story you tell yourself about who you are was learned, inherited, reinforced by repetition. You were not born thinking you weren't enough. That belief came later, planted by words that weren't yours. watered by experiences that bruised your innocence. And over time, it hardened into identity, into truth. But here's the quiet secret the world won't shout. Truth isn't always true. Sometimes, it's just a story told for so long. No one questioned the narrator. What if your inner world isn't broken, just misframed? Because perspective is powerful. It's not the event that defines your life, but the meaning you give to the event. And meaning is a lens. It can be distorted. It can be changed. Think of your mind like a camera. The lens you use determines the image you capture. If your lens is smudged with fear, pain, and unworthiness, everything you see will feel like proof that something's wrong with you. But if you clean the lens, if you reframe the narrative, you begin to see clearly. Not every rejection was failure. Not every mistake was weakness. Not every ending was a loss. Sometimes, the breakdown was the doorway to breakthrough. Reframing is not denial. It's not pretending everything is fine. It's courage. It's saying, yes, this happened, and I get to decide what it means to me now. It's choosing to see pain as a teacher, not a punishment. Choosing to see setbacks as redirections, not defeats. Choosing to look at your reflection and say, I'm still becoming, and that's beautiful. You don't have to rewrite the past, but you can reclaim the story. This is where transformation begins, not in changing your life instantly, but in changing the way you see your life, the way you speak to yourself, the lens you carry into every moment. And when you shift that lens, you shift everything. Because when the story changes, the mind softens, the world feels wider, and suddenly, the same life you once feared becomes a canvas for growth. You can water the right seeds. You can shift the lens. But if the soil around you is toxic, how can anything healthy grow? We don't become ourselves in isolation. We absorb. We reflect. We become echoes of the spaces we inhabit and the people we invite in. Your environment is not neutral. It's either lifting you or quietly pulling you back to who you used to be. The conversations you have, the voices you follow, the content you consume when no one's watching. It all seeps in. Light in, light out. Noise in, chaos out. You are the product of what you consistently allow to surround your mind. Ask yourself, when you leave that room, that relationship, that group chat, do you feel expanded or diminished? Lighter or heavier? Because energy is contagious. And without realizing it, you might be carrying pain that isn't yours, fear that doesn't belong to you, limits that were never yours to believe. This is why protecting your inner world means guarding your outer one. Not with walls, but with wisdom. Sometimes healing means stepping away, not out of hate, but out of love for yourself. It means choosing to be around people who remind you of your strength, not your wounds, who speak life into your dreams, not doubt into your vision. It also means creating space for stillness, for beauty, for words and sounds that nourish instead of numb. And no, you won't always have full control over your surroundings, but you do have power. Power to curate, to choose, to protect your peace like it matters, because it does. Think of your mind as a room. Would you let just anyone walk in and graffiti the walls? Of course not. Then why allow thoughts, shows, headlines, or people to do the same? This is not about living in denial. It's about living in design. Intentionally, gently, with a fierce commitment to feed what you want to grow. Because when light is what you take in, light is what you begin to radiate. The mind is a mirror. It reflects what you repeatedly show it. And over time, what you reflect becomes what you believe. What you believe becomes how you behave. And how you behave becomes your life. This is the silent power of mental programming. But here's what most people don't realize. You're being programmed every single day, whether you're aware of it or not. The voices in your head, they didn't all come from you. Some came from your childhood, some from authority, some from culture, and most from repetition. Repetition is how the mind learns. It's also how it forgets itself. So if you've been repeating words like, "I can't," "I'm not enough," "this always happens to me," then it's no wonder your reflection looks dim. But the mirror doesn't lie. It simply reflects. So what happens if you begin to show it something new? This is where affirmations become more than words. They become architecture, blueprints for a new mental home. When you say, "I am worthy," you're not pretending. You're remembering. When you say, "I am becoming," you're not rushing. You're realigning. These phrases aren't magic, but they are medicine, given in doses, taken daily, until they dissolve the poison of old programming, because at first they feel foreign, uncomfortable, like wearing shoes that aren't yours. But that's not because they're false. It's because you're not used to hearing truth spoken with kindness. And the more you say it, the more the mirror starts to change. Not because the words are perfect, but because you finally believe you deserve to be spoken to with love. So speak to yourself like someone you're healing, someone you're guiding home. Because the mind is always listening, always learning. And if you don't choose what to feed it, it will feast on what the world throws its way. Let your affirmations be your compass, your anchor, your rebellion against the noise. And slowly, the mirror reflects back a new reality, not because the world changed, but because you did. You've planted new thoughts. You've spoken kinder words. You've shifted your environment. And yet, something in you still resists. Why? Because change, even when it's good, feels like death to the version of you that's been surviving. Your mind is wired for familiarity, not fulfillment. It clings to the known, even if the known is pain, even if the familiar is the very thing holding you back. And so when you try to rewrite the story, your nervous system panics. Your body whispers, "This isn't safe." Not because it's true, but because it's new. This is the paradox of transformation. We crave the breakthrough, but fear the breaking. You might notice it in the form of self-sabotage, procrastination, doubt dressed up as logic, a voice saying, "Who do you think you are?" But that voice isn't your enemy. It's just scared. Scared to let go of what it knows. Scared to step into a self it hasn't met yet. And that fear deserves compassion. Not control. Not suppression. Just presence. Sit with it. Listen to it. Thank it for trying to protect you. Then move anyway. Because growth isn't comfortable. It stretches. It burns. It disorients. But discomfort isn't danger. It's a sign you're touching the edge of who you've been, and brushing against who you're becoming. Remember, the butterfly doesn't break free gracefully. It wrestles. It resists. And in that resistance, it gains the strength to fly. So if you feel like you're falling apart, you're not broken. You're breaking open. The resistance isn't proof you're failing. It's proof you're changing. And you don't need to rush the process. You only need to trust it. Trust that with every shaky step forward, you're teaching your body a new truth. It's safe to expand. It's safe to be free. It's safe to outgrow what once kept you alive, because the old you was surviving. But the new you, the one rising beneath the discomfort, they're here to live. You've walked through the soil of your mind. You've seen the weeds. You've felt the thorns. You've dared to plant again. Now, it's time to become the gardener. Not the frantic fixer. Not the perfectionist. But the quiet, steady presence. Who tends? Who listens? Who trusts? Because reprogramming your thoughts isn't a destination. It's a way of being. A relationship with your inner world that's ongoing, evolving, alive. The gardener doesn't force the flower to bloom. They prepare the ground. They water with consistency. They prune with care. And they wait, in faith. So must you. You are no longer chasing transformation. You are living it. In the way you speak to yourself. In what you allow into your mental garden. In the way you return, day after day, to choose thoughts that nourish instead of deplete. Yes, the old weeds may still rise. But now, you recognize them. You don't panic. You don't shame yourself. You simply pull them gently and plant again. This is the new way. Less force, more presence, less control, more trust, because you finally understand. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them, shapes them, chooses them. You are the author, the architect, the gardener, and every day with every thought, you write the story of your becoming. So tend to your mind like sacred earth. Let gratitude be your sunlight. Let discipline be your watering can. And let love, unapologetic, unwavering love, be the seed that starts it all. Because when the inner garden is rich, the outer world blooms in reflection. And in this quiet revolution, you don't need to prove anything. You only need to grow. And maybe the most radical thing you can do in this noisy world is to choose peace within. Let this be your legacy. Not perfection, but cultivation. Not control, but conscious care. Because a positive mind isn't found. It's grown. And now, you know how to grow it.